right, what's going on, you guys? Nick here with Nick Strength and Power. I've got a couple of interesting stories for you guys today. The first story that I've got for you guys today, Big Ramy speaks on the arm wrestling match with Larry Wheels that we now know to be fake. So that was staged, it wasn't an actual match, and Ramy put out this video, and this is what he had to say.
Good evening, everyone. I had something to tell you guys. Yesterday we make video, me and Larry, and it's a fun video. But I saw a lot of videos about that everywhere. It's just a joke between me and him. It's a video for fun between me and him.
It's not for real.
Yeah,
it's not for real, guys.
Yeah, and Larry is a really nice guy, and I love him. See you guys.
So I feel like one of the main reasons that Ramy felt the need to have to speak on this or address this at all was something that I saw a lot in the comment section of my videos and Larry's video. A bunch of people saying that this was stupid of Ramy to risk as a bodybuilder, to even risk doing this with Larry Wheels, someone that has no experience, Ramy, someone that has no experience with arm wrestling, to go up against a guy with experience like Larry Wheels. I mean, you run the risk of tearing a bicep, injuring your forearm, you know, whatever the case may be. As a pro bodybuilder, of course, your body is your, I mean, that's your breadwinner. Your body is your livelihood. So I noticed that Ramy was getting some backlash and some hate from the people that thought this was legit, and saying that, you know, he's stupid for risking this. But I think at the end of the day, whether it was real or fake, and now that we know it was fake, you know, I think collaborations like this are good for bodybuilding overall, because these are the things that are going to get more people interested in watching the Mr. Olympias. If they see a Mr. Olympia like Ramy actually have a personality and go out and collab with Larry Wheels. So, you know, I think this negative pushback that Ramy got is the exact type of thing that we don't want, even though, you know, some of it would be justified if it was a legitimate risk to himself and he was actually doing the arm wrestling match. But I want to see more collaborations with Ramy getting out there with some of these guys like Larry Wheels, whether it's an actual arm wrestling match or anything else. Of course, we don't want to see him get hurt, and we don't want to see him take unnecessary risk, especially with Larry Wheels. But I just want to see him do more cool stuff, and I think some of this blowback might have discouraged him from doing that, hence him responding at all. Now, next up in the news, as we covered in yesterday's video, Nathan DeAsha, Muhammad Shaban, and Rafael Brandao are now all three out of the Arnold Classic lineup. I also wanted to include in this video, even though we covered it yesterday, Nathan's actual clip of him describing why he cannot compete in the Arnold Classic. So let me roll that for you guys right here.
So guys, what's going on? You've all seen the video that I just posted me training in the sling. This video might be slightly long, 3 or 4 minutes. I do apologise, but I'd rather me tell you what happened than people talk BS and get it out there and don't know the facts and just think they know everything. So, roughly now, 10 days, well, 2 weeks ago, I was doing a shoot in the gym, training biceps, felt a small pull. I thought, oh, that feels a little bit funny. It was a little bit strange, thought nothing of it. Went with my friends and my family to a play centre. I was arsing round, and then it pulled again, and it just felt a little bit sore and a little bit hard. So I phoned the doctor. Went to see the doctor on the Monday. On the Wednesday, it wasn't really bruised or nothing. He said to me, I had a small tear in the bicep.
Now, let's get into some Arnold Classic 4-week out physique updates, starting with Andrew Jacked, who is 4 weeks out from the Arnold Classic Amateur. He posted this video on his Instagram going through some training, some posing training practice with none other than the Sultan of Symmetry himself, Flex Wheeler. Now, the one thing that jumps out to me here the most is that Andrew Jacked, his legs look bigger here. They look improved to me, and I think that was one of the things that was holding him back, is obviously his upper body is tremendous. Very complete, very impressive, holds a lot of size in the upper body, a lot of fullness, but the lower body didn't really match so much in some of the other competitions that he did outside of the NPC. The other thing I would say would be more separation in the legs. But here, even though you can't really see as much separation yet, and again, he's still 4 weeks out, his legs look really pretty big to me here. So it would appear to me that he has brought them up. And again, the importance of this Arnold Classic Amateur is if Andrew somehow wins that show, he would not only get his pro card, but that also comes with an automatic invitation to next year's Pro Arnold Classic and Men's Open Bodybuilding. So not only would that be tremendous for him in the sense that he would get the pro card, but it would pretty much catapult him straight to a major show in a lineup with some of the best bodybuilders on the planet in the first Arnold Classic of 2023. So while there's plenty of excitement with the main pro divisions, I think, this amateur portion of the show is going to be pretty exciting because Andrew Jacked, I think, stands a good chance at turning pro. Now, another 4-week out update that we got came from none other than Steve Kuclo. Steve Kuclo is a guy we haven't seen as much from. I feel like we were just discussing this yesterday, some of the guys that we hadn't seen as much from, but Steve posted this. I guess you could call it a physique update because really mostly what we had been seeing from him was just training videos, but in this you see a little bit more of his physique in the sense that you can see he's in shape. I mean, Steve, one of the things that has always been impressive about Steve and the physique updates that he posts leading up to shows, crazy vascularity, which of course is typically an indicator of condition, and I don't think we've seen anybody in the Arnold Classic lineup yet that looks as vascular as Steve looks at this point in their prep. I would say the closest that we've seen to Steve, how he's looking in this picture, would be Justin Rodriguez. From a conditioning standpoint, Justin looks like he's pretty far along. He's looking pretty serious, and Steve here, I think, is looking pretty comparable to that. But I think Steve's vascularity is kind of in a league of its own. I think he's further along than anybody else in that regard. Now, since we just mentioned Justin Rodriguez, I think it's only fair that we talk about Justin again. Steve, by the way, I think is a guy I think he's going to be in the top 6. I think it would be very unlikely that he's not. But since we're talking about guys that are in shape, let's look at Justin's latest physique update. This was posted just 11 minutes ago at the time that I'm recording this video. 24 days out to be exact, and Justin lately has been posting a ton of physique updates. Pretty much every day we see something from Justin, and I think he's got the right idea. That is how, as a pro, you get yourself talked about, you get yourself out there, you give your fans the access that they want, that behind-the-scenes prep process. I mean, that is what gains these guys the most loyal following, and I think Justin has got that figured out. Because he has given us plenty. So in this particular update, the latest one, you see a side tricep and a back double bicep, and we're talking about vascularity like we were with Steve. You got that, pretty much the same thing with Justin, but look at the striations in the shoulders, the vascularity all throughout his quads. You can see almost some striations in his glutes already. I mean, the guy is in tremendous shape, and I think Justin is a guy that I've said before, wild card, I've said dark horse. I think he's a guy that I would be shocked if he's not in the top 6 here, potentially, gunning for a top 3 spot, especially now that we know that Nathan and Muhammad and Brandao, they're all out, and Nathan would be a guy before that I would say was going to be a top 6 guy. So I think Nathan being gone is really freeing up a space in the top 6 for one of these other guys. And keep in mind, Justin was 4th last year behind Steve in 3rd, so I think it's appropriate that we talk about Steve and then Justin in that order in this video as well. Now, let's go over to Classic Physique 4-week out updates, the first of which we've got from Terrence Ruffin via his story, a very brief but very telling posing clip. I've said it before, I think he's going to win the class. I don't think anybody is going to beat Terrence and take the crown this year. I think he's really reaching his all-time best. His best Olympia placings, second runner-up back-to-back 2 years in a row. He's now the Arnold Classic champion, reigning, defending. I think he will successfully defend, and I think these guys are going to have a really hard time beating him. Breon hasn't been able to beat him 2 years in a row at the Olympia. I think Breon, just by his track record alone, is the biggest threat to dethroning Ruff Diesel. Breon is the only other Arnold Classic Physique champion in this lineup. He's the only former Mr. Olympia winner in this lineup. And he hasn't been able to beat him for the past 2 years at the Olympia. We have no reason to believe that he's going to beat him here. And then I think behind Breon, like I said, you've got Urs Kausinski, and of course we've been talking about Ramon Dino. But first, let's show an update from Breon. So Breon, I think, arguably is looking pretty impressive, but you could make the argument that Breon, even though he's looking impressive at 4 weeks out here from the Arnold, every year before the Olympia, I think Breon looks extremely impressive. I don't think it's unusual for Breon to look impressive in his physique updates going into a show. But the question is, will those physique updates looking good, will that translate into looking good enough on stage to win? I mean, this past Olympia is a perfect example of that. Breon looked pretty damn good going into the O, and he wasn't able to beat Terrence there, and I have a hard time believing he's going to beat Terrence here. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Now, the guy that I think will likely place behind Breon, or be, gunning for Breon the hardest, is going to be Ramon Dino. And we got another physique update from Ramon. Again, at 4 weeks out. So we've seen a lot of physique updates from him as well, so he's definitely taking advantage of that. And I think it's also worth mentioning that almost every physique update that we've seen of Ramon has been under pretty ideal lighting. Now, we've talked about this in the past. I think the two things that are holding Ramon back the most are his back being the number one thing and his chest being the number two thing. And I think the reason why that's noteworthy is because Breon has such a good back. I think that's going to give Ramon a difficult time beating Breon, at least in the near future. As he continues to improve his back, I think he has an opportunity to maybe, eventually pass Breon. But I think that's going to be Ramon's biggest obstacle here at the Arnold. I would really like to see that call out be the top three: Ramon, Breon, and Terrence. But who knows? It might just be Terrence and Breon. Now, also in classic physique, here's a guy we don't talk about as much, Peter Molnar, looking really impressive in his 4 week out updates. Now, the thing about Peter is he hasn't really been able to get the job done at these bigger shows. He's got a really good physique. He's won some smaller shows. He gets to the bigger stages, but he doesn't really deliver as far as like a top 2, top 3 placing on these bigger deals like the Olympia and the Arnold Classic. But he looks really good in these off-season pictures, and I think the reason for that is because he spent a lot of his career, and I would argue maybe the prime years of his career competing in another organization, not the IFBB. And I think, unfortunately, he's kind of on the tail end of his best competitive years. I think he's almost 40, or he's about to turn 40, like right around the time of the Arnold Classic, which, he's already been competing for like 2 decades prior to that. Maybe his best years are behind him, or maybe he finds himself in the top 6 here. But that's going to wrap it up for the video today, guys. I hope you did, in fact, enjoy it. Please give it a thumbs up if you did enjoy it. Please subscribe to the channel if you have not subscribed yet already, and make sure you click that bell notification icon when you click subscribe. As always, I love you guys. Appreciate you guys. Nick Strength and Power, signing out.